We are approaching Easter, and so the intensity is revving up. And you might remember a couple of weeks ago, we heard a story about Jesus in the desert for 40 days and how hungry he got there. Today we hear about his thirst as he's walking on his journey to Jerusalem and goes out of his way to stop by this small town. He's alone. All of his friends went off into a bigger town to get food, and he's just hanging out there by the well because that's where the water is, and he would like a drink. And what happens there with the woman he meets is a story that we need, and we need it right now. One of the joys of friendship is when you have a friend who shares faith with you. A lot of us have friends that don't necessarily share faith, and we can have a closeness with them, we can appreciate them, but it is with a friend you share faith with that you really feel like you can grow. And one of those friends in my life is Joan Horgan from the College of St. Rose, campus minister there and leader in the spiritual life office. And she and I were talking recently about this gospel, and what we talked about got so interesting, I invited her to come and share some of it with us, because what we can see here is that Jesus is on his mission to Jerusalem, and he never wavers from what he's meant to do. He's meant to reveal to people who God is and how much God loves us. But he also got thirsty. And so where we are today at this point is a moment where his thirst brought him to meet a woman that he was meant to encounter.
One of the things that we had spoken about as we were having a conversation about this gospel is the thought that this gospel is a lot of details, a lot of things about each person that some are clear and some are a little hidden in John's gospel. But it felt like it should almost be a play, that's something we saw on stage so we could really get even more of a visual than just the gospel story itself draws for us. And I've done a lot of theater in my life, so I'm used to the fact that you get your script and the director starts telling you what your motivation is and what your intention is and what is your person actually after, even if the words don't reveal that so clearly. And so we're in a context of a desert, for one, and we're there at noontime, which is the hottest part of the day. So it brings up some questions of like, why are they at the well at the hottest part of the day? Most people start the day there at dawn or before the sun's come up or at sunset. And why is this rabbi speaking to a woman in public? That wouldn't have normally happened. What are they doing here? Why is this woman kind of sassy in the way she protects her faith and is willing to challenge what this rabbi Jesus has to say to her? And what is he doing in Samaria? What is he trying to expand in terms of who might have access to salvation? And because a lot of my own theater experiences are in musicals, my first thought is, what's her song? Like, what would be the song she would get up and sing for us? And I kept thinking of that song from the band U2 that says, I still haven't found what I'm looking for. But yes, I'm still running. You broke the bonds, you'll break the chains. You'll carry the cross of my shame, of my shame. I want to believe it, but I still haven't found what I'm looking for. No, I still haven't found what I'm looking for. What was she looking for? The fact that she was there at noon as a woman in that culture meant that she probably didn't have any friends. Because like I said, the other women were there in the morning. In fact, she may have gone at noon because she needs water, but she probably didn't want to run into anyone. And some part of that story about, well, why isn't she part of the community, is related to maybe a piece of the gospel that's part of the longer version that we didn't read tonight, because that's 4 pages long. And so that's a little bit lengthy of a story to tell on a day like today. But it's about the part where Jesus says, go get your husband. And she says, well, I have no husband. And he reveals to her his understanding of her and says, that's true that you have no husband. You've had 5 husbands, and the person you're with now is not your husband. And if we were to understand that time, women were not allowed to divorce their husbands. So it meant that she had been rejected by many people for reasons that our gospel doesn't tell us. But if we think about the culture of that time, it may have had to do with not being able to bear children or sons, or some other reason that she would have been rejected by these many different people. And Jesus, if we picture his intention, is to reveal to her he sees her, he understands her in some way, sees what she's been through. And she comes to this well thirsty, common human experience, and meets somebody else who's also thirsty, but wants to show her something else, something more about that thirst.
And it's interesting that she's having the same experience that the people in the first reading are having. Their question at the end of that first reading while they're in the desert is God with us in this or not? And she's asking the same thing, essentially. What really matters? Where is my hope in this? In the first reading, those Israelites had been freed from slavery, which was the most joyful thing that had ever happened to them. But now they were in the desert. They weren't yet to where they were going to be, and they were lacking something they really needed. Hand sanitizer. Water. Is the gospel not always about right now? No baby wipes. No toilet paper. No rubbing alcohol. In their case, no water, and they needed it. And she is asking Jesus, can you do something to help me? Because you're talking about a kind of water that would help me, because I'm so tired from coming to get water all the time. Many of you might remember me telling you in the past that I used to weigh more than 100 pounds more than I weigh right now. Obesity was a huge part of my life, starting as a child and going on for more than 20 years. And I thought I would never be free of it. It was a terrible burden, and I had tried every diet starting when I was a teenager. I had done every exercise routine. I'd been to dietitians. I'd had all sorts of things. In fact, at one point, I lost 80 pounds, and then I gained it back. And I was giving up, but a friend suggested this behaviorist dietitian who I went to. And at the first meeting, she asked me all about my story. Tell me about what you've been through. Tell me about the diets you've done. Tell me about your day today. What did you eat today? What was your activity today? And I unveiled all of that for her. And as I told her about my diet and about my history and about my routines, she took notes. And then she looked up and said, it sounds like you have a hard time managing your hunger. I can help you with that. And to my surprise, I cried right there. You're having a hard time with your hunger. I can help you with that. I thought that was the thing that couldn't be helped. I thought that I just needed to find the right diet or the right approach, the right routine. But she said, no, let's go to the root of this. Let's talk about your hunger. And it changed my life to have somebody talk to me in that way.
When Scott had shared that story with me, I thought that was the most beautiful piece, which is that before she told him, let's do this, and this, she said, I see you. I see that there's a hunger there that's hard to figure out what to do about. And I can help you with that. And in today's gospel, that's what Jesus is saying to this woman. I see you. We so often imagine that Jesus is getting ready for an accounting of the sins. But here he was just showing up in love, saying, I see you are thirsty. I can help you with that. And don't we all know that? We know what it's like to thirst for something and maybe chase after things that are not satisfying. Maybe it's food or drink or internet or shopping or relationships. but we go chasing and running after something. And instead, Jesus sees us and says, I see you're hungry. I see you're thirsty. I can help you with that. And the woman didn't have to change, and we don't have to change, because like Father Gregory Boyle reminds us, you are exactly what God had in mind when he made you right now.
And the living water that he gives her, it doesn't solve her physical thirst. She was going to be thirsty again, but she no longer would be feeling that desperation that comes from thinking her needs could never be met. Since I met with that behaviorist dietitian, I've still gotten hungry at least 3 times a day. But I no longer think that I can eat my way to wholeness. I no longer chase whatever is the deep longing inside of me with that way. I don't use food the way that I used to. I now have someone who taught me that I can look at things differently. And that message changes her life. And it's meant to change ours too. That we are seen. That God is not apart from what we're going through. God knows full well about the terror of coronavirus. God understands the fear of small business owners and people who can't afford to take time off work to be with their kids who can't be in school now, because how are they going to pay the rent? And because Jesus knew what it was like to be hungry, he knew what it was like to be thirsty, he knows that those needs cannot be ignored. And he's going to go in just a couple of weeks to the fullest extent possible to show us just how much he gets it and how much he wants us to understand that love. So as we were talking about if this were a musical, what song would really be the one that would show what Jesus wanted us to know? And we thought that perhaps this one might be the one that would get the message where it needed to be. When the evening shadows and the clouds appear, and there is no one there to dry your tears, oh, I'll love you for 1,000,000 years and make you feel my love. The storms are raging on the rolling sea and on the highway of regret. When you're exhausted by uncertainty, there's love you can discover yet. I'll go hungry, I'll go black